today's session will work is we've sort of run through some welcome and introductions. In a moment, after I play a quick video, I'd like to hear from you, who's in the room. We're always interested to know, and we're always thankful for community members coming along to these sessions, but it helps us a little bit just to know, get a bit of a feel who's in the room. Then we'll be hearing a bit of an overview from Vanessa, and then Nathan will present about the project. There'll be quite a long opportunity for question and answer following that. And the questions and answers that we field today will be specifically about Plenty River Trail. So if there are other questions that are about sort of maintenance or operational things in the park, or that are not about Plenty Gorge Park, they might be about other Parks Victoria issues, then we might sort of put those questions on notice or park those questions and come back to you, because the purpose of today is about contributing and learning more about this new project that we're working on. If we have time, we'll do a bit of a visioning activity that asks you what your vision for the trail is, and then we'll wrap up and close about 7:25, depending on how we sort of go. There isn't space for a formal break, so if you need to duck off, please do so at the time that suits you. So before I hand over to the project team, I'm just going to play a quick video. And I'm just going to share and unshare my screen because of sound, so just bear with me. Okay, here we go.
We're creating a new trail in Melbourne's north, in the gorgeous Plenty Gorge Park.
Take two.
We're creating a new trail in Melbourne's north, in the gorgeous Plenty Gorge Park. This new trail will create the missing link in the Plenty River Trail between Bundoora and Doreen, showcase the natural beauty of the parklands, provide a walking, running and cycling route. We're planning for the trail now. Do you have plenty of ideas? We want to hear them. Find out more at engage.vic.gov.au/plenty-river-trail.
So some of you might have come across that already. It's been shared on social media a little bit, but it's just a useful capture of sort of what we're planning in terms of Plenty River Trail, and that we are open for public consultation between now and the 13th of December. So this is an opportunity for the public to have a say, and I'll talk you through the stages of consultation. But what I'd like to invite you to do now is to practice using that little chat function, and just tell us in the side corner, because we'll sort of kick off and do the project presentation, just aware that some people will have to leave early. If you could just type into the comments box your name and your connection to Plenty Gorge Park. Let us know, you might be local, you might live in the area, you might love Plenty Gorge Park for the environmental values or for a whole range of reasons. So I'd like to hear a little bit about who's in the room. So if you could just type that in now, I'll give you a bit of a moment. Rose, you've got your hand raised?
Yes, I do. I don't have a chat for some reason. I use Teams all the time at work, and I normally have it, but it's missing from my toolbar at the top.
That's okay. There'll be other opportunities to ask questions and to share. But while other people are typing their names and their connection to the park, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself and your connection to the park?
So my husband and I live on Jubilee Crescent in Mill Park, which is right at the Tanunda Wetlands portion of Plenty Gorge Park. And
beautiful.
Yeah. And we like to go walking and cycling. So we're quite interested to learn more about this river trail, because it might mean that we'd be able to more easily go for bike rides in a nicer place.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Rose. We've had a bit of feedback about that cycling connection, and, particularly providing a connection that links into public transport as well, for some people who want to kind of take their bike on the train and link through to another site. So we've got some people on the line who use the park recreationally. So we've got some walkers. Thanks for joining, Alison, and David, who uses the park for mountain biking. We've got some Greensboro locals on the line as well who would like to run on the trail. We've got a few cyclists on the line, and we actually have people from different areas are joining the park. So I can see that we've got sort of Greensboro in the south represented, and we've got some people on the east side from that Nillumbik side. So keep typing in your comments as we go, because it is really helpful, and it also connects you to other people who might be on the line. You might realise that your neighbour who you haven't seen for a while could be tuning in, so it's a nice opportunity there. So if you haven't commented yet, do keep that up, and we'll continue with the project presentation as you do that. So the Plenty River Trail is part of this broader program of works, this really kind of big investment by the state government called the Suburban Parks Program, which overall is about $154 million to deliver this. And it will provide, 6,500 hectares of new upgraded and open space, including parks and trails. So the whole idea of this project is about increasing community connectivity to, local green and open space, which is something that people have kind of come to appreciate more and more, given that we've been sort of living and being largely in our local area. So I imagine lots of people are kind of interested in these kinds of investments. And Plenty River Trail is just one of those investments. So I just kind of wanted to frame that this is kind of part of a bigger scope of work that are happening across Melbourne, metropolitan Melbourne, as part of that investment into suburban parks. And, in terms of Plenty Gorge, it's an existing parkland, but Suburban Parks was also funding some kind of new parks and pocket parks and things like that. So if you're interested, we can follow up and provide you with a bit more information about suburban parks. I'm going to hand over to Vanessa now, and thanks so much for joining, Vanessa, to give us a bit of a local overview of Plenty Gorge Park and what sorts of things are happening in your role.
Welcome, everybody. It's lovely to meet you all, even though it's online. So the overview that I'm going to give for Plenty Gorge Park, it's going to be fairly brief. And if you want more information, we have the master plan that was developed back in 2018, and there's a lot more information about the park in that plan, and that's accessible. I'm pretty certain it's still on the Engage website as well, so we might be able to send you the link out later so that you've got access to that as well. So just next slide, thanks, Kaz. So basically the Plenty Gorge Park is roughly 1,300 hectares in size, and it's managed by Parks Victoria. The park stretches between Bundoora all the way through to Doreen. And look, it offers a wide range of natural and cultural experiences, and being only 20 kilometres from Melbourne makes it a pretty special sort of park. As most of you would be aware, if you're local, you can go into the park and all of a sudden you don't realise you're actually surrounded by suburbia anymore. You can feel quite, you get a lot of nice space around you and just feel a lot more isolated, which is fantastic about the park. As Kaz mentioned earlier, it is Wurundjeri country, and so the Wurundjeri people obviously have a lot of values and culture to do with the park, so it's quite significant, which is fantastic. We also have a lot of European culture as well, so we've got mill sites. We did an archaeological dig on an old bridge in site. We've got beautiful homesteads within the park, so the European culture also comes through quite significantly within the park as well. It's also very significant to a lot of flora and fauna species, and that's including about 262 native fauna species, and 39 of those are on the Victorian Rare and Threatened Species Register. We've also got 631 flora species, and 20 of those are on the Victorian Rare and Threatened Species list. So we've got some very significant values within the park that we prioritise to protect. So currently the park is very well used and very well loved. We've noticed a dramatic increase in visitation during COVID times, which has been sort of fantastic to see. And we get all kinds of visitors for walking, cycling, nature spotting, just people who want to come out for picnics and just, sort of really enjoy the park. If you go from one end of the park to the other, you can get quite different experiences with the gorge and, beautiful grasslands up in the north and beautiful forest lands down in the south. So the community around this park is actually expected to grow from the current level of about 100,000 people to about 700,000 people in the next 15 to 20 years, which is quite a significant growth in the area. And so this trail will be an excellent opportunity for visitors to be able to explore areas that they haven't visited. And like I said, if you're going from one end of the park to the other, you can get a very different experience throughout the parkland. Next slide, thanks, Kaz. So, as I mentioned earlier, we've got a master plan for the park that was created back in 2018. And that was pretty significant to be able to get this happening for the parkland, and gives us a really good direction for the future. So like I said, it maps out that future of Plenty Gorge, and it's really to meet the needs of that growing community that we know will happen. You know, even in the 4 years I've been here, we've got a lot more development on the fringes and on the edges of the park. And it's also going to be a way of, you know, protecting and enhancing those unique and natural cultural values as well. So early in 2018, the public had the opportunity to be able to, you know, have their input and their feedback into the master plan, which was also really significant because it helped us to find out what the community wanted from the park as well. And the first objective of that master plan was to be able to improve the access and connections to the park. So the Plenty River Trail was identified as pretty much one of our #1 priorities of the park. And so we were very lucky that, you know, it has actually been the aspect of that plan that's actually been funded. I think that's probably all I've got. So, yeah, and like I said, any more information that people want, please go to the Plenty Gorge Master Plan. It's all in there for you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Vanessa. I imagine we'll have a few questions for you once we kind of open up for questions. I noticed that there are some coming through the chat, but I'll hand over to Nathan, and then we'll sort of go to questions after that. Nathan, can you give us an overview of the project, please?
Thanks, Kaz, and good evening, everyone. So yeah, my name is Nathan Lavender. I'm the project manager looking after Plenty River Trail and other projects within the Suburban Parks program. So just a quick overview. This is a really interesting project because it will really open up a huge section of the park to users, which is why we're so keen on going out and engaging with as many people as we can, because we do really want to understand what the end users' requirements are going to be so that we can take them into account when we're doing the design and development of this trail. Next slide, please, Kat. Cool. So in terms of the overarching project objectives that are sort of guiding the development of this trail, so the first one is enabling connection of Plenty River Trail to the Plenty Gorge Park and the Northern Growth Area suburbs. So that's a given. The second one being enable key connections to Mernda and Hawkstow stations. So a great outcome of this is that it does open up additional active transport corridors linking into those stations for people to use. It offers visitors various passive, natural, and cultural experiences. So as you may or may not know, Plenty Gorge Park holds a great deal of environmentally and culturally significant items throughout the length. So we're really going to be able to give visitors access to those different experiences. Engage actively with traditional owners, Wurundjeri. So as Vanessa mentioned before, and Kaz as well, that the traditional owners of the Plenty Gorge Park are the Wurundjeri people. So we have been really actively working with them to try and capture their desires as part of this park. Some cool objectives that we're looking at doing is some storytelling throughout it, as well as doing some cultural mapping exercises, going out onto the lands with them and understanding their history. Engage actively with the community. That's what we're doing right now, speaking actively with everybody, wanting to get their feedback in regards to the trail. And finally, engage actively with local councils and other local statutory approval bodies. So in terms of people we've already met with, so we've met with the CFA, FRV, both Whittlesea Council and Nullumbik Council, Melbourne Water, Yarra Valley Water, Heritage Victoria as well. Yeah, we're trying to reach out to as many groups as we possibly can. Next slide, please, Kath. So in terms of the project scope, so there's actually 3 projects that are occurring within the Plenty Gorge Parklands. So the first one being the Plenty River Trail, which is a $19.3 million investment, and it is part of the Suburban Park program. So what that's made up of is a trail leading in from the northern section of the park on the western side of the river, so mostly within the Whittlesea side. So it links in from Bridgeend Road and Mernda Station in the north, comes all the way down, links into Hawkstow Station, as well as that, crosses Gorge Road, and then goes all the way to the south and will link into the existing Maroondah Aqueduct pipe bridge crossing there, which we'll be looking at refurbishing to enable walking and cycling use. What we'll also be looking at doing is installing a new bridge crossing, which we'll talk about the location in a coming slide. And like you said, Gorge Road crossing, so looking at options to cross the road at that location. Secondly, there's the Hawkstow picnic area, which is an $800,000 investment. So what entails with that is the installation of an entry driveway off of Gordon's Road. What that will do is really open up the accessibility of that area, because there's an existing car parking location at that area, so it will enable people to actually get into there much easier. And secondly is installation of an accessible toilet and connection to sewer, so looking to make the trail usable by everybody, so installing facilities along the trail to make that happen. And finally, the Nyoka Bush Camp, which is just to the east of the Hawkstow picnic area. So that's a $385,500 investment as part of the Victorian Great Outdoors program. So this campground is quite aged, so we're looking to just do general amenities and improve the accessibility, doing upgrades for that, and also looking to install accessible toilets in there. So we really want to try to make as much of this open as possible. Some other items to note in terms of mitigation strategies that we're doing, as there is, like we mentioned, quite environmentally and culturally significant items throughout the park. So we'll be doing a flora and fauna assessment as part of this, understanding where the different species of flora and fauna are and trying to come up with strategies to mitigate impacting them. Cultural heritage, so both Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal cultural heritage, so doing studies with that. Identifying the different artifacts along the length of the trail, identifying strategies on mitigating the damage to them and avoiding at all possible, and also working with Heritage Victoria and Wurundjeri to come up with a management plan to, again, make sure that we're mitigating the damage as much as possible. We're also looking at doing a fire safety strategy. As many of you know who are locals within that area, there has been some significant fire events in the past within the parklands. So trying to understand how we can incorporate existing fire management that's going on, and also looking at how we manage the people who are using this trail as a strategy to help guide the development of this, and also looking at how emergency services will be accessing different points along the trail. And finally, a cool objective that we're looking to do to capture some of the significant values of the park is incorporating storytelling signage along the length of the trail to make it a bit more of an interactive experience. So looking to do signage to provide storytelling opportunities for the different Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal and shared story experiences throughout the park, as well as provide learning opportunities for the different environmentally significant items throughout the park. Next slide, please, Kaz. Cool. So into some bit more of the detail in terms of the new bridge crossing that we're looking at doing. So it's located about 1.5 kilometers south of the Gorge Road intersection there. So what that is at that location, it's an existing Melbourne Water path to access their water main, I believe they have going through there. So there's an existing somewhat trail there, and we're looking to install a new bridge crossing to link the trails on either side of the river at that location. So it provides a really good linking opportunity between Whittlesea side and Nillumbik side. Next slide, please, Cass. In terms of the upgraded crossing, like I talked about before, this is a really cool objective that we're trying to achieve. So it's the refurbishment of the old Maroondah Aqueduct Old Pipe Bridge crossing. So what we're looking at doing is repairing and refurbishing it to enable walking and cycling use across that crossing there. So it's kind of hard to see, but in that bottom left photo there, there's actually an existing concrete trail on the Nillumbik side, so we're looking to link into those existing trails on that side there. But obviously that's dependent on a structural assessment of the bridge. It is quite aged, so we just need to make sure that it's safe to be able to use in that facility. Next slide, please. Cool. And like I mentioned before with the objectives, we are trying to open this trail up to as many users as possible. So we want it to be suitable for all users, including cycling, walking, and wheelchair access where possible. And to achieve that, we want to try and incorporate universal accessibility as much as we can. And what's guiding that is the Parks Victoria has a trail guiding guidelines that define the different grades of different trails and what those different grades can actually achieve in terms of the users using it. So what we're looking at achieving is either a grade 1 or grade 2.1 trail. So what that means is for grade 1, it means all abilities access. So it's flat, even, and a hardened trail. So anybody can use it. Or grade 2.1 where pretty much everybody can use it. And if you're in a wheelchair, you might need some assistance to go throughout it. As well, to ensure that it's universally accessible, we want to try to make it 3 meters wide where possible. So obviously, depending on the different site constraints, to be made out of a hard surface, which we'll talk about in the next slide, and also to make sure that everyone knows where they're going, we'll incorporate wayfinding signage along the trail. Next slide, please. So in terms of the surface, you may have seen it if you've gone onto the EngageVic portal. So we have got this as a question for the community to provide feedback. We're looking at 3 potential trail material types. So that's asphalt, granitic sand, or crushed rock. So all these materials we are looking at incorporating, and we're keen to hear different people's feedback in regards to that. But in addition to community feedback, the different factors that will feed into that will obviously be the maintenance requirements. So looking at the whole of life cost of the different trail materials, the cost of construction, and finally a design assessment of the different material types, making sure that it suits our requirements. Next slide, please. So in terms of timelines for the project, so we'll really be kicking off the design development in Jan of next year, where we'll have a design consultant onboarded. We'll be looking to have our concept designs completed in March, so that'll be like the 50% design mark, where we'll have most of the details figured out, and what that will enable for us to actually go out to engagement again for our stage 2 communications and engagement piece, where we'll present that design package to yourselves for feedback. From there, we'll look at having an early works design developed by May, because what we want to try and do is target areas where those items of significance in terms of environmental and cultural significance, that package will try to avoid that, so we can try and open up some areas for construction as soon as we can. Leading on from that, we're aiming to have our detailed designs completed by June. Our statutory approvals gained by September, and what that enables for us is then for our early works package to start in September next year. And then following from that, that package should finish around November, leading into our main package starting in November. And this project has a finish date of around mid of 2023 that we're looking at the moment.